let's go now to the former Deputy Chair of the Conservative Party, Lee Anderson, of course, MP for Ashfield. Lee, you no doubt heard that conversation there. People are absolutely furious in the views we're getting in today, Lee. Here's a typical comment from Audrey after the scenes on Wednesday outside Parliament and inside. Martin, I don't recognise our once great country anymore. Joanne says this: Martin, this country will never recover its identity. It's about time we sent the army in to sort this mess out on our streets.
Shocking, Martin. I mean, I was there, as you know, on Wednesday night. We could hear the commotion outside, and this is down to we've got a very cowardly Khan running London. He seems to be letting the not only the Jewish population down, but the whole population of London and Britain as a whole. And I heard the comments here. I heard the comments earlier you was making about Suella, some of the comments she made earlier this week. And I don't actually believe that these Islamists have got control of our country. But what I do believe is they've got control of Khan, and they've got control of London, and they've got control of Storm as well. And we've seen the shocking scenes played out in Parliament just a few nights back where Stormer crumbled. He put pressure on the Speaker to alter the rules, if you like, for the nature of the debate and the ultimate voting. And this is a result of weak leadership. This is Stormer. I mean, I've got a little bit of sympathy for the Speaker. I did sign the EDM, but this stems with Stormer and it stems with Khan. God forbid us, Martin. If Labour get in control at the next election, expect more of this across our great country.
And what's the answer then, Lee? I mean, it got to the point where the aggro on the streets, and I was in the thick of it. I saw the police turning a blind eye to face coverings, to projectiles being thrown. And outside, they were haranguing people inside, and they were holding up placards saying your grandchildren will need to know how you voted. Yeah. Is there a climate of fear inside Parliament, Lee? Are people voting now, not with their hearts, but through fear?
Well, there is a climate of fear, Martin, obviously, and that's our own fault. That's all of our fault. It's all of Parliament. It's our job to actually run the country. Now, look, it's 40 years this year since it's the anniversary of the miners' strike. And I was on some of the picket lines with my dad. I can remember my dad going to Orgreave, coming back a changed man. There was a different type of policing there, Martin. I'm not saying we should go back to that brutal sort of policing that I saw on the picket lines all those years ago. But I tell you what, we could do with a little bit of that back now to control our streets, because people are just turning up in their thousands and doing anything they want, and they are laughing. They are laughing at our police, and I feel absolutely disgusted. And again, this stems with Khan. He's actually given our capital city away to his mates. We've got Starmer there, we're using Khan's pockets. He's doing nothing. He's more interested in getting into number 10 and giving our country away than actually looking after our country. And a special message here, Martin, I'm getting quite angry about this. Anybody who's thinking about voting for reform at the election, who thinks this is going to sort out all our problems, look, beware. Because if you let Labour in through the back door, expect more of this and expect our cities to be taken over by these lunatics.
But Lee Anderson, Chris Hope in the studio here. Surely you're confusing the two things there. There's policy, there's law being passed, but the police are and should be operationally independent. I mean, you can't blame choices made by the police. Let me finish, Lee. You can't blame operational choices made by the police on the ground on politicians. The laws are there. There's a question about why the police didn't enforce them operationally, but you can't really bring those two into the same place, because they're not. There's a separate issue here with how the police are applying laws passed by you in Parliament.
Yes, no, I get that, Chris, 100%. But, ultimately, we run the country. And if the police aren't doing their job, and they're not doing the job, Chris, as you know, we need to step in and take over. It's about time we scrap the mayorship. The
politicians can't take over the policing. That is not how we are in this country.
Well, Chris, go back to 1984 and look at what Maggie did and the Conservative government in 1984 when they ensured that the working miners got to work in this country. There comes a time in this country where the whole of Parliament has got to make a stand and saying this is not good enough. There are people on our streets, our Jewish community, who are fret to death of going out because this nonsense we saw being shot onto Big Ben, Elizabeth Tower, on Wednesday night. Something needs to happen. We can't just keep saying it's an operational matter. We've got to do something.
But your government brought in elected policing and crime commissioners.
Yes.
They do exist.
Yeah.
You have got Sadiq Khan. He's in charge.
And I'd get rid of him tomorrow,
along with the Home Secretary. Now, today, James Cleverly, who's the Home Secretary, he said you've got to divide the operational powers of police with policy. That is why we have trust in our police in this country. If you mess with that, you're in real trouble, surely.
Well, what trust is there, Chris, in the police, in the Metropolitan Police at the moment? We've seen scandal after scandal with the sexual cases coming to the fore. We're seeing this nonsense on our streets. We've seen it with the BLM riots. We're seeing it now on Parliament Square on almost a weekly basis. Are you telling me there's trust there? Seriously?
Well, so what are we going to do about it then, Lee? I mean, what do we just send in the batons like in '84?
Well, I think the police need to take a different direction, Martin. Obviously, it's very, very difficult. Chris is right in one thing that he says. You know, ultimately, Mayor Khan is in charge of the police. He's the police and crime commissioner. Ultimately, you know, the people of London need to come to the senses, I think, in May and get rid of him and restore some pride and some safety back onto the streets of London.
OK, Lee Anderson, we'll have to leave it there. And, of course, Sadiq Khan isn't here to defend himself. A lot of pops were had at him there. He would no doubt disagree with a lot of that. But thanks for joining us, Lee Anderson. You've had your Weetabix. Superb stuff. Now you